Good day, everyone, especially to our instructor, Ma'am Cherry and Hinovia. I am Michlav E. Geronimo, and I am one of the reporter of Chapter 8 titled Selecting and Constructing Test Items and Tasks. So, the outline of our topic will be the overview relating the last topic and also the categorizing test types, relating tests with levels of learning outcomes, constructing objective supply type, constructing non-objective supply type, and the constructing selected response type. So, in the previous presentation of Miss Weska and Miss Acabal, they familiarized us with the initial process in developing classroom tests, so it always starts with the planning phase that basically answers the question, what do I test? And leads you to the presentation of a test which is needed to be assessed if balanced ba yung test sa desired cognitive behavior. So, dito sa selecting and constructing test items and task, we will answer the question of how do I test? So, how to operationalize assessment of the learning outcome intended for a period of study. So, let us start with in categorizing test types. So, years of experience in school, for sure na napagdaanan nyo na yung iba't ibang types of test, both formal or informal. Like matching type, enumeration, identification, true or false, modified true or false, multiple choice, essay, at iba pa. So, test types are categorized based on test formats. So, we have supply type, selection type, and performance type. So, supply type, it is a constructed response, while selection type, it is a selected response in which may pagpipilian. So, there are test formats appropriate to measure knowledge and simple understanding, while there are some tests not fit to measure complex and deep understanding. So, based on Bloom's cognitive taxonomy, as the simplest and lowest level, it involves remembering and recalling specific facts, symbols, details, elements of events, and principles to acquire new knowledge. So, in the revision of Bloom's taxonomy, remembering can be viewed not only as being able to recall, but also as being necessary in learning interrelationships among basic elements and in learning methods, strategies, and procedures. So, these two types of learning make up the early phase of understanding, requiring lower order thinking such as remembering, comprehending, and applying. So, according to Macmillan, he refers latter two as simple understanding, requiring comprehension of concepts, ideas, and generalizations known as the declarative knowledge, and application of skills and procedures learned in new situations referred to as procedural knowledge. So they represent how knowledge is represented in the minds of the learners, either as a learning concept or as a learned way of doing things. So Macmillan provides definition of the levels of declarative and procedural knowledge as simple understanding. So, declarative knowledge is also usually explicit knowledge, so meaning you are consciously aware that you understand the information that has been taught. For example, You know for the fact that 06-119-01 is your birthday because you were born on that 19th day of June in the year 2001. So procedural knowledge, also known as imperative knowledge, is a type of knowledge exercised in performance of a task. So the classic example of this knowledge is riding a bicycle. So when someone was teaching you how to ride a bicycle, no matter what they said, you probably struggled to hold it until you'd actually got it a few times. So once you figured it out, it quickly became a procedural knowledge. So examples presented will differentiate declarative and procedural knowledge as a simple understanding involving comprehension and application. Sample is able to state the law of supply and demand. So for the comprehension, you will be able to explain the law of supply and demand, and in the application, you will be able to explain the rising prices of vegetables during summer times. For the procedural knowledge, is able to compute the area of a rectangle. For the comprehension, is able to compare the size of two given lots in terms of area, and in the application, is able to determine the number of 1x1 tiles needed to cover a 50 feet by 100 feet hall. So in 2001, NITCO gave categories of lower order thinking skills and some examples of generic questions for assessment. These generic questions can be useful in formatting completion or short answer items to assess simple understanding. So example, the knowledge of terminologies. We have the what is a blank, and also in the specific facts, when did blank happen. So for the convention, where are blank usually found? So meron din tayong manipulating symbols equations that show that blank equals blank. So beyond the knowledge and simple understanding levels comes deep understanding, which acquires more complex thinking processes. So Macmillan in 2007 utilizes a knowledge or understanding continuum to illustrate the relative degree of understanding from knowledge to simple understanding to deep understanding. So the table shows how the continuum is harnessed in aligning the cognitive levels to learning outcomes with sample behaviors for each level. As you can see, knowledge and simple understanding involve the first three cognitive levels. So yung remembering, So yung remembering, we have the recall, recognize, the name, and the describe. And also in simple understanding, we have level 2, which is the comprehending, and it falls into interpret, exemplify, classify, compare, explain, and infer. And then in the level 3, we have the applying, which is solve, apply, modify, demonstrate, employ, calculate, and generate. While deep understanding requires the three higher cognitive levels, the analyzing, the evaluating, and the creating. So the next illustration that I will show you is the relationship between learning outcomes and test types. So it can be observed that the test types can be flexible and versatile to different levels of outcomes. not to be limited or exclusive to only one cognitive level. If nakikita nyo yung arrow pababa, which is pinutol ko lang kasi baka hindi na ma-clear yung table. So, nakikita nyo yung arrow pababa na nakaturo pababa. So, it suggests that supply or selection type can be used for both lower level as well as higher level outcomes. So, knowledge and simple understanding can be handled by objective supply type and objective selection type. So, sample of objective selection type is completion and short answer items. So, some parliament for objective selection type, reading multiple choice, and matching type. Also, in deep understanding is assessed by the same category of item format based sa table na nakikita nyo, pero using non-objective type. So, si knowledge and simple understanding, objective types, while si deep understanding naman is non-objective type. So, ano ba yung mga example? So, restricted and extended essay questions, modified selected response, performance task, selected response, and performance task. What indeed matter is the careful construction of the item elements to appropriately elicit or bring out the cognitive processes involved an elicitation device. So, elicitation device can be used is like a question or directive for a supply type. So, it can be used to assess both low and high level outcomes. So, here are some examples. So, sample for constructed response is the short answer and extended essay. So, for the lower order, according to the article you just read, what factors contribute to the climate change? So, this is a short answer supply type for comprehension, since it is based on specific reading material. Yung nakasulat na according to the article you just read, so without citing the source of the response, it could also be a simple recall question. So, ano yung simple recall question? Yun yung what factors contribute to the climate change. Sample naman for the higher order, write an article on how the government and the community can work together to mitigate the factors using environmental damage. So, this is likewise a supply type. But since it requires a higher order thinking at the creating level, so ano yung at the creating level? Yun yung write an article, so it will call for an extended essay. So, deep understanding or deeper understanding is necessary to demonstrate this outcome as involves synthesis or combination of previous information and observation derived from multiple sources. So, another example for selected response type, which is the multiple choice and lower order. So, according to the article you just read, what contributes powerfully to climate change? So, letter A, the volcanic eruption. Letter B, the population explosion. Letter C, the forest denudation. And the letter D, the carbon emission. So, the current option is based on a specific material which calls for simple comprehension. For the higher order sample, which of the following factors which affect climate change can be controlled by man? So letter A, the strong earthquake. Letter B, volcanic eruption. Letter C, melting of glaciers. And letter D, the carbon dioxide emission. So selection of the correct option requires analysis of the alternative event. First, it calls for identifying those factors affecting climate change. So, yung sinasabi dito which of the factors that affect climate change, and later analyzing whether man can control it or not, so that can be controlled by man. So being able to do one skill or not will be adequate to select the correct option. So Miller, Lane, and Grunland, in the year 2009 presented categories of thought questions for deep understanding and sample item stems. So these sample stems can be used in constructing test types, both supply and selection types, that can elicit or generate complex thinking skills. So we have comparing. So sample stems for comparing, which is the compare the following methods. Sorry, dili na ko siya basa. So another example, we have the relating cause and effect, which what are major causes of and what would be the most likely effects of. So for ano naman, pwede rin namang for classifying, we have the group the following items according to, and what do the following items have in common. So in creating, we have list as many ways as you can think of for, and make up a story describing what would happen if. So these sample items can be used again in constructing test types, both supplying and selection type, that can generate complex thinking skills. For deep understanding, a commonly used test types is the essay, restricted or extended essay, which requires students to engage in various higher order thinking processes like performance tasks. In the case of writing a letter, producing a plan and story writing. So it also assesses high-level learning outcomes involving complex thought process like analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So in 1993, Angelo and Cross extensively designed classroom assessment tasks for college level that are performed base type in each word. So here are some examples for analyze. First one is analytic memos, and analytic memos, which writing a 1 or 2 page analysis of a specific problem or issue. The pros and cons grid, which making a list of pros and cons of a decision made. And the third one is the content, form, and function outline, in which analyzing the what, how, and why of the particular message of an advertisement or commercial. For evaluate naman, we have the muddiest point. So the muddiest point, the misconception check, and the empty outline. So muddiest point, identifying what students find least clear in a lesson, story, or demonstration. For misconception check, assessing students' prior beliefs that can hinder learning, especially when it comes to religion beliefs. And the outline, recalling or organizing the important points of a lecture or a reading. So for the create, we have the application cards, the directed paraphrasing, and the paper or project prospectus. So application cards, designing an application of a learned scientific principle or procedure in world directed para real world. So directed paraphrasing, it translating what has been learned in one's own words or form for a specific audience. In And for paper or project prospectus, we have writing a first structured draft of a paper or project. So, sample nito is ang thesis. And now, let us proceed to constructing objective supply types of items. So, supply type of items. So, the item types falling under supply type require the learners to construct a purpose, a response to a question or directive. The subtypes, however, differ in terms of the structure of the response needed to answer the item. So we have two types, which are the completion and short answer items. So completion type, it is an item structure consists of a stimulus which defines the question or problem and the response which defines what is to be provided or constructed by the learner. And it is an incomplete statement with a blank is often used as a stimulus and the response is a constructed word, numeral symbol, or phrase to complete the statement. So, ito yung sample ng completion type item structure. So, the stimulus is the incomplete statement with a blanks and the response is constructed in single word or two, numeral symbol or phrase. So, the first sample, a four-sided polygon is called blank. So, expected response is a quadrilateral. And the novel No Limitang Hirere was written by Dr. Jose Rizal during the blank colonial period and the expected response is Spanish. And a book trader sells books 30% more than what he pays for them. For a book sold for 150 pesos, his profit is blank pesos. So the expected response is 45. So yung response ay yung magkukumpleto sa statement. Sometimes instead of independent incomplete statements, kagaya nito, as the stimulus, a discourse with gaps is used to make it more communicative. So, gap filling is another term for this variant as the students fill several gaps in a discourse depending on the target outcome. So, sometimes or madalas, language teachers use this form for integrative testing, kung saan more than one types of skill are needed to fill the gaps. So, new skills are vocabulary and comprehension skills. So, example, unintended learning outcomes is provided, synonyms for targets, words in paragraph. So, magpo-provide yung learner ng symbols for costly, cooks, and honor. So, name and honor. So, sample ng costly is expensive or high-priced. For cooks naman, pwede ding chef. And for the name, pwede ding title. And for the honor, pwede ding recognition and integrity. So, experts in test development agree on helpful guidelines in the construction of collection items. So, first, there should be there should only be one correct response to complete the statement. So this contributes efficiency in scoring since a heat of connection can easily be prepared in advance pag isa lang yung expected response. So proper wording of the incomplete statement must be carefully done para maiwasan yung maraming possible correct answers. Another is an exception of this rule. If you are testing for a verbal creativity where giving diverse but acceptable responses is desirable. So it is important to mention it in the test instruction. For example, yung kanina na provide synonyms na example. So yung costly, the more synonyms that students can give to the word costly, like expensive or pricey, the more points they can earn. So objective scoring will likely have to be modified sa guideline. Next, the blank should be placed at the end or towards the end of the incomplete statement. So this will provide the reader appropriate and adequate context before he or she gets to answer the blank and consequently avoids being perplexed or confused. So in that previous sample, kanina yung sa noli me tangere, if the blank is placed at the beginning like during the blank period, Dr. Jose Rizal wrote the novel Noli Me Tangere. So it can possibly call for diverse and ambiguous answers, like colonial or earlier, without reading the rest of the statement. And the next, avoid providing unintended clues to the correct answer. So the validity of a student's score is jeopardized or compromised when he or she answers the correct answer or what the correct response is. So his or her score may represent different kind of ability apart from what is intended to be measured. So next, for the short answer items naman, instead of supplying words to complete statements, relatively short answers are constructed as direct answer to questions. So similar to completion type, the short answer items can be assessed by learners' declarative and procedural knowledge that require such thinking processes as remembering, comprehending, and applying. So let us check the sample. Same lang din sa sample kanina. So So the stimulus, let us check the sample. So let us check the sample. Same lang din sa sample kanina. So the stimulus is the interrogative statement or the direct question, and the response can be short phrase or statement. So kung kanina a four-sided polygon called blank, dito naman ay what is a four-sided polygon called? So direct question siya. Since same with the Noli Me Tangere question. So letter B. During what period was Noli Me Tangere written by Dr. Jose Rizal? And the letters, so the short expected response is Spanish. So another one, how much does a book trader gain for a book he sells for 150 pesos if he gets 30% more than what he pays for it? So the expected response is 45. So yung expected lang pero yung expected response same lang pero yung pag-construct ng question ay magkaiba. So, si completion type, blanks or gaps. And si short answer naman ay more on direct questions. So, writing short answer items similarly follows the guidelines in writing completion items. So, number 1, state the item so that only one answer is correct. And number 2, state the item so that the required answer is brief. So, requiring long response would not be necessary. Pwede din kasing maging dahilan po ito for the students na hindi masagutan yung ibang questions. Kasi hindi sapat yung allotted time. And another, do not use questions verbatim from textbooks and other instructional materials. So, this will give untrue disadvantage sa mga students na hindi familiar sa mga materials since it become a memory test instead of comprehension. And the number 4, designate units required for the answer. So, the example, in poor, how much does the food caterer charge? And in the improved, how much does the food caterer charge per head? So, na-specify na niya. And number 5, state the item succinctly with the words students understand. So, in the poor, as viewed by creatures from the earth, when does the blood moon appear in the evening? So, in the improved, when does a blood moon appear? So, na-specify na din niya yung statement. So, in completion type and short items, they follows they have common points. So, first one is yung appropriate for assessing learning outcomes involving knowledge and simple understanding. And another, capable of assessing both declarative and procedural knowledge. Both are easy and simple to construct, and also both are objectively since a key to correction can be prepared in advance. And lastly, both need ample number of items to assess a learning outcome. So a single completion or short answer item is not sufficient to test mastery of a competency. So that is my report, and this topic will be continued by Mrs. Jane Libara.